Morning, everyone. I'd like to learn today's Mishna in memory of my mother, Shlomis Bas Yaakov Eliezer. Okay, so we are in Mishnayos Meiser Sheni, Perek Dalid, Mishnah Yud, Chapter 4, Mishnah 10. In the previous Mishnah, we had a situation where if you found monies if you found a box of money, a handkerchief wrapped with money in it, and in it there was the word Meiser, then you assume that the money is Meiser Sheni money. Now the Mishnah goes off, because I mentioned that, now the Mishnah goes into a case completely unrelated to Meiser Sheni. So again, Perek Daled, Mishnah Yud, Chapter 4, Mishnah 10. Hamaitzi Kli, one finds a vessel, v'chasav alav carbon, and the word carbon is written on it. Now the word carbon is translated as a sacrifice, referring to an animal sacrifice. But we also find the word carbon referring to what we call hektish. Hektish means the property of the Beis HaMikdash, or the Holy Temple. And the word carbon is often used in that context. It doesn't always have to refer to specifically an animal sacrifice or some kind of sacrifice on the altar, but rather it can be a word instead of the word hektish, which means sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash. So on this vessel is written the word carbon. Now we know you cannot offer a vessel as a sacrifice. So clearly the word carbon here is coming to say that something here is meant to be sanctified to become the property of the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Im haya shel cheres," if this vessel was made of pottery, hu chulin, then we say that it is unsanctified. Umash b'seiche carbon, but its contents are meant to be sanctified. So again, the word carbon here is not being used as an animal sacrifice, but it means that something here is being sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash. It'll become the property of the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash will sell it, and then the money of it, because it remains sanctified, means remains the property of the Beis HaMikdash and is sanctified, and the Beis HaMikdash will use it according to what it feels it needs to use it for. But the point is here, in what we have to consider this and how we have to treat it, because if it's sanctified, we can't use it for our own purposes. In this case, where there is pottery was so insignificant and cheap that the assumption is no one would sanctify that to the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore the word carbon on the utensil is not meant to identify the utensil, but to identify its contents, that the contents are meant to belong to the Beis HaMikdash. But if, let's say, we're talking about a vessel that was made out of metal already, that was something that was more common to be actually, that it itself should be sanctified to become the property of the Beis HaMikdash. A person would basically say that Harezu Hektish, this belongs to the Beis HaMikdash and thus sanctified. And in this case, the metal utensil has the word carbon on it. So here Rabbi Yehuda says, "Hu carbon," the vessel itself is sanctified. What is inside remains not sanctified. The fact that the word carbon is on the vessel is clearly attributable to the vessel itself, not necessarily attributable to the contents. And therefore, when it comes to the contents, we say that the contents should follow the majority of things that are not hektish, that don't belong to the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, we say that the vessel we assume it was sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash, but the contents not. Amrulai, they said to him, which means the sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, it is not the practice of people to store something not sanctified into something that has been sanctified. According to you, Rabbi Yehuda, that you're saying by the metal vessel that the vessel itself is sanctified, but not the contents. That means you're telling me that a person was storing non-sanctified objects, a non-sanctified object in this sanctified object. You're not allowed to do that. If a person, you're not permitted to do that. You're not permitted to use something that belongs to hektish for non-sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash purposes. So how can you say that the vessel is sanctified, what's inside not. That means the person's doing something wrong. And therefore, they say that when you find a metal utensil that says the word carbon on it, you have to assume that both are sanctified. The vessel is sanctified because the word carbon is on it. And we're going to assume that it's inside with sanctified. The word carbon meant to go on what's inside also, because otherwise a person wouldn't put chulin into a sanctified vessel. You're not allowed to do that. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda holds that's true. You're not allowed to store something that's chulin that's not sanctified in something sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash. The thing is, though, that we have to consider that possibility that people inadvertently have done that. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we have to strongly consider the possibility that people inadvertently did that, and therefore that is what we will assume, that that the chulin, that the object inside the sanctified vessel was inadvertently put in there, but we're not going to assume that it's sanctified. We're actually going to assume that it's not sanctified. The Chachamim say no. The Chachamim say we would not assume that people will make that mistake. People know that. People will be careful about that. They wouldn't store something non-sanctified in a sanctified article, and therefore we say that the vessel itself that has the word carbon on it is sanctified to the Beis HaMikdash, while the contents are not. And the Bartanura says the halacha follows the Chachamim that when you find a metal vessel with the word carbon, the vessel is sanctified, the contents are not. But the Bartanura also points out that when it comes to the case of Harah, where we're talking about a utensil, that the utensil made of a pottery utensil that has the word carbon on it, there the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Yehuda that although we would not assume we would typically assume that what's inside this vessel is not sanctified because people don't store non-sanctified articles in a sanctified vessel, and we're not going to assume that they did it inadvertently. Nonetheless, when we're talking about a vessel that is made out of earthenware, that's pottery, there the possibility of actually saying that somebody sanctified this Beis HaMikdash is so uncommon that we will say that the article is not sanctified, and the article was not sanctified, and the contents are. Now, there's not a problem. Actually, just realize there's no problem storing a sanctified object in a non-sanctified object as long as it's not tummy, as long as it's not impure. So the point is that even though the Chachamim do say that the contents of a metal vessel with the word carbon, we also assume are sanctified. They do not agree with the Tanakh with Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to an earthenware vessel, where it says the word carbon on it. We will say that the vessel is not sanctified because people don't sanctify earthenware vessels to the Beis HaMikdash, and that the word carbon on the vessel meant to identify the contents, that the contents are sanctified. We are in the Laws of Lashon Harah, chapter 6, paragraph 4. So the Chavetz Chaim, in the beginning, it has been discussing the fact that even to listen to Lashon Harah is forbidden, unless you can determine that there would be some kind of constructive purpose for you to listen to it. Sometimes there'll be a mitzvah to actually hear or listen. Allow a person to speak Lashon Harah to you, even though there will be no practical difference to you or that which was mentioned before. But here will be the reason. Here will be the constructive purpose. If he evaluates a situation and he feels that by hearing out the whole thing this person has to say, and you know he's saying it just to gossip, just to put the person down. And however, you will then, by hearing out the whole story, you will then have the ability to show the person telling the story or those listening that what this person is saying can't be true. Or you can mention some other mitigating factor, some other factor that would actually, again, take away the negativity of this report from the person being spoken about. And here in the footnote, the Chavetz Chaim writes something very interesting. If you could actually be able to refute or take the piece of Lashon Hara that was heard and actually convince others that it's not right to say this, it's not right what you've said about the person. This actually is a very good piece of advice, that if a person has actually stumbled and listened to Lashon Hara, he should quickly find some kind of a merit to tell the person who's speaking to Lashon Hara. By doing so, you'll take away the bad feeling that he has about this person for what he did. And by doing so, he'll actually be able to undo what he did wrong. If you heard Lashon Hara, but now by you turn that hearing Lashon Hara into a way of taking away the bad feelings this person has on the person he spoke about, you have retroactively rectified what you did. But all this is, we're referring to bistama, meaning when the assumption is that you could do so, that you could rectify, you could straighten out the person about what he said. But if you recognize the nature of the person speaking, whenever you try to justify this person, he'll find more fault. It is better to remain silent. But now, if there are other people that were here, let the person finish, and then go to the others who heard, and mitzvah sheyazber echad me'hashemim lefnei shar hashemim es kol ha'inyan l'schus. The proper thing would be to do is for someone else who heard this all amongst others to now turn to the others and try to find merit for the person that should have spoken about. And now to take away from them any kind of negative perception they may have of this person. So that he and they would not be considered people who were gathering together to hear Lashon Hara. If now they take the Lashon Hara and they refute it, that the Chavetz Chaim says will be able to make up for what they did wrong by listening to the Lashon Hara in the first place. But again, they could only do that because they first heard the story. Now, it doesn't mean you should go looking to do that, even though if you could do something about it, maybe you would. But the point is that if you can take what you did wrong, the Lashon Hara, and now take that Lashon Hara itself and now use it to refute the negative connotation the person was trying to give, you've now rectified the fact that you heard that you've listened to Lashon Hara. There's another example the Chavetz Chaim gives when it's proper. It's a mitzvah to hear the Lashon Hara, to hear the negative words that this person is saying about someone else. Somebody comes to complain to you. He needs to complain to him. He needs to let off steam on someone for what someone did to him. And he understands the nature of the person who is now doing this, that if he lends him an ear, he'll be able to calm him down. And he's not going to go telling other people what happened. Could be as bad if he goes tells others. It could be as bad as the fact that they will actually accept what he said. By doing so, you'll have increased peace amongst Jews. Meaning, a person is coming to tell you that complain about what someone did to him, but you know that by hearing him out, they'll calm him down, and he won't speak about this anymore. It's a mitzvah to hear him out. Any kind of permission, any kind of leniency that we have given regarding listening to Lashon Hara, he has to be very careful while hearing this, not to accept it as the truth. But just to take it into consideration, so that he too doesn't land up getting snagged in the trap of Lashon Hara if he lands up actually accepting that which he's heard. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.